I'm calling time of death on what we've learned to call false flags. The game is up, I say. We see it. A meme on X mocking Benjamin Netanyahu has gone viral. 2 million X users and counting have seen the image of Israel's Prime Minister presented as a game show host. Under the question, to drag the US into war with Iran, you will, he offers contestants the choice of attack US ship, attack US base, assassinate US official, or conduct terrorism on US soil. It's just a joke. We know, nothing's real here. But it has attracted the attention of millions of people just scrolling on their smartphone screens. Something has to give. And when you get right down to it, though the meme is meant to be just for a laugh, by now it's really not funny. Away from social media, there's real life and real death to deal with. It's not funny because we have evidently reached the point where the general population, millions of people, can be expected by comedians and satirists to understand at a casual glance that the joke here is about the use of false flags. And it's made funny by the understanding on the part of that public that false flags have been in use for well over 100 years at least. Spotting false flags is being made into a game. For those who have somehow managed to miss out on the term, the first online dictionary I checked defined a false flag as a political or military act orchestrated in such a way that it appears to have been carried out by a party that is not in fact responsible. For those who pay attention to what used to be called the stuff of conspiracy theorists, a group more recently redefined as the first to see what's really going on, false flags are identified as a commonplace throughout history. The sinking of USS Maine in 1898 that triggered the Spanish-American War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident that brought the US more directly into the Vietnam War. The list of incidents with the shadow of false flag hanging over them is a long one. The problem is that once observers of what's going on get the trick of spotting them, false flags stick out like the proverbial sore thumbs. I'm calling time of death on the deployment of false flags by all sides because now the world's wider population is on high alert for them. The game is officially up. Whatever objective you have in mind, the time is way past due to come up with some new tricks because the old playbook has fallen apart. Good friend of mine and fellow online commentator Leilani Dowding posted this on X. I smell a false flag incident coming up. Why has the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier, due to be decommissioned next year, been deployed to these waters, by which Leilani means the sea off the coast of the Middle East, to be a sitting duck? If Israel can use missiles to hit targets with such precision, why would you need an aircraft carrier? These poor men and women aboard. Close quote.
Have you got...
These poor men and women aboard. Close quote. What this means is that if anything happens to USS Nimitz, whatever happens to USS Nimitz, millions of regular people around the world are going to cry false flag rather than entertain for as much as a New York minute that any other explanation is even remotely believable. The mainstream media will cry terror attack or unprovoked attack, and the intended target will be handed the blame and will be at war again. This is no joke. This is a serious state of affairs. This is yet another demonstration of the extent to which too many people have zero trust, less than zero, in what's offered to them as the official narrative. Millions, tens of millions, now have a default setting in relation to whatever their governments and mainstream media tell them, and that is to assume they're being lied to. This state of affairs is real, and it matters. World War III draws closer every day, if it hasn't already started. In Washington, as in Tel Aviv, the warmongers want full-scale war with Iran, a country of 90 million people and demonstrably bristling with conventional weaponry. The justification for making war is the claim that Iran is working towards having nuclear weapons of its own, a claim made since the early 1990s. So, weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, sound familiar? Claims of WMDs were the false flag that we used to justify full-scale war against Iraq in 2003. The claim that those WMDs could hit the UK in 45 minutes, leading us into the war that claimed, by some estimates, the lives of 1 million civilians. No WMDs were ever found, not even in the smoking ruins after the war was over. My point is that a cynical general public, sickened by the knowledge they are continually dosed up with propaganda instead of truth, now knows too much about how the game has been being played. We've arrived at a place not unlike that illustrated by the old story about the little boy who called wolf. If something real happens, if a state has to tell its people what has actually happened, who among the populations will believe a word they're told by the usual suspects? I think that those usual suspects have wanted that war since the 1990s, a well-known objective by now, to have 7 wars, of which only war against Iran remains uncompleted. If you don't believe me, here's General Wesley Clark, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe from 1997 to 2000.
If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Even terrorism is wearing out as a word with which to frighten people in the traditional way. I believe that anyone paying attention knows that one so-called terrorist group after another has been paid for and trained by the very states claiming to have suffered under their brutal and terrifying activities. In my opinion, it's no secret that Islamist terror groups of one sort or another were supported by the US in Syria, fueling the rise of ISIS in that country as the West connived to topple then-President Bashar al-Assad. It's now an understatement to say terrorism is in the eye of the beholder. Those described in mainstream media as terrorists one day become freedom fighters the next. Government is supposed to be of, by and for the people. Increasingly, it's impossible to overlook that we, the people, are being played. For a while, there might have been plausible deniability. Maybe the game was played better once, or too few people had awoken to the ugly reality. Those days are gone, and by now, when the general population is playing false flag bingo in cynical expectation of the next outrage or atrocity, the old game has to be over. It used to happen on the government's watch. From now on, it will be happening on ours.